Life has a funny way of setting people up to believe in a story that isn't complete. People look at you, they size you up, they put labels on you, and they decide how far they think you can go. They make assumptions about your limits, about your strength, about your courage. And once they've done that, they grow comfortable because in their minds you're predictable. They think they know your role in the story. That's exactly what happened at the Alaska summit. The United States and the rest of the world thought they had India figured out. They thought they knew the script. They assumed India would sit quietly, nod politely, follow along, and keep its ambitions small. But what shook that room to its core was when India didn't play the role they had written. India flipped the script, and in doing so, shocked those who underestimated it. There's something powerful about surprising people who doubt you. It's not just about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. When the world underestimates you, it creates a kind of fuel, a fire that burns inside you, reminding you every single day that you are more than the labels, more than the assumptions, more than the limitations placed on you. India carried that fire into Alaska. Every move, every word, every stance carried the weight of a nation that was tired of being boxed in. And when that fire finally showed itself, it caught the whole room off guard. Because the most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest, not the biggest, not the one everyone already expects to win. The most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody saw coming, and this principle isn't just true for nations, it's true for people too. How many times in your own life have you been underestimated? Maybe people told you that you weren't smart enough, talented enough, strong enough. Maybe they smiled politely when you shared your dreams, but deep down they didn't believe in you. And maybe, just maybe, you started to believe their script. But let me tell you something, the most powerful move you can make is to stop living by the story others wrote for you. The moment you choose to act boldly, to flip the expectations, to surprise those who doubted you, that's the moment everything changes. That's the moment you take back control of your narrative. When India stood its ground at Alaska, it wasn't just about politics. It was about identity. It was about saying, we are not who you thought we were. We are not who you said we were. We are more, and we will prove it by how we show up. That's the heart of surprising those who underestimate you. You don't have to argue. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't even have to shout. You just act with strength and let your presence do the talking. Words can be dismissed, but actions can't be ignored. That's why the shock in that room was so real. Because when someone they thought would remain silent suddenly speaks with authority, the entire room has to recalibrate. You see, underestimation is a gift in disguise. It's the cover that lets you prepare in silence, build in the shadows, grow without constant resistance. People ignore you while you're building, and that gives you space to sharpen yourself, to plan, to get stronger. But the flip side is this. The moment you step into the light, the moment you reveal the strength you've been building, you shatter every illusion they had about you. And that shock is where power is born. That's what India showed at the summit. Years of growth, years of progress, years of preparation suddenly came into the spotlight, and the world realized that the quiet one in the room had been a giant all along. The lesson is simple. Don't waste time trying to convince people not to underestimate you. Let them think you're small. Let them believe you're quiet. Let them stay blind to your potential. Because when you finally reveal who you really are, when you step into your boldness, when you flip the script, the surprise will carry more weight than any argument ever could. India didn't walk into that summit begging for recognition. India walked in carrying itself with undeniable authority, and that action alone forced the world to acknowledge it. Respect doesn't come when you try to convince people to give it to you. Respect comes when your actions leave them no choice, and this is what makes surprising those who underestimate you so powerful. It shifts the entire dynamic. People who thought they knew, you suddenly realize they don't. People who were comfortable overlooking you suddenly find themselves paying attention. People who dismissed you suddenly scramble to adjust to the new reality. That shock is not just about the moment, it's about rewriting the future. Because once they've seen what you're capable of, they can never go back to seeing you as small again. That's the power India tapped into at Alaska. And that's the same power each of us holds when we stop living down to expectations and start living up to our true potential. Fafi Keynote Tumhao. When preparation meets boldness, history gets rewritten. There is a saying that opportunity doesn't wait for you to get ready. The truth is, opportunity comes when it comes, and if you're not ready, it will pass you by. But if you are ready, if you've been preparing in the quiet, if you've been building when nobody was watching, if you've been sharpening your tools in the dark, then the moment opportunity arrives, you can seize it with boldness. That's when history gets rewritten, and that's exactly what the world witnessed at the Alaska summit. India didn't stumble into that room by accident. India walked in with years of preparation behind it, with a foundation built on progress, growth, and vision, and when that preparation collided with boldness, the world saw a new chapter being written right in front of their eyes. Preparation by itself is not enough. You can study, you can practice, you can strategize all you want, but if you never step up, if you never take bold action, all that preparation dies in silence. Boldness without preparation isn't enough either. Boldness without preparation is just noise, it's recklessness, it's fire without direction. But when preparation and boldness finally meet, that's when the world changes. That's when you shock the people who thought they had you figured out. That's when you show up in such a way that even your critics have to stop and take notice. The Alaska summit wasn't just a meeting, it was the collision of years of preparation and the courage to finally show it without fear. Think about how this principle applies to your own life. How many people do you know who prepare endlessly but never take action? They wait until everything is perfect, until every box is checked, until there's zero risk. But perfection never comes, so they stay stuck in preparation forever. Then there are those who jump boldly into everything without doing the work behind the scenes, and they fail not because they lacked courage, but because they lacked readiness. The real winners are the ones who quietly prepare while nobody is watching, and then when the moment comes, they have the boldness to step out and reveal everything they've been building. That's the formula for rewriting history. Preparation plus boldness. That's the formula India lived out in Alaska. India didn't just show up with words, it showed up with proof. The world had seen India grow into a tech powerhouse, had seen it rise economically, had seen it develop militarily, had seen it stand resilient through global crises. That was preparation. But preparation alone could have kept India in the shadows if it didn't step boldly into the spotlight. The Alaska summit was the stage where all that preparation came to life. Boldness turned quiet growth into undeniable presence. Boldness turned silent progress into a global statement, and that's how history shifts. Not when you quietly build forever, and not when you act without substance, but when you combine both into one unstoppable force. Here's another truth. The world doesn't reward preparation until you show it boldly. Nobody will clap for the years you spent working in silence unless you reveal what that silence was producing. Nobody will hand you respect just because you've been quietly putting in the work. You have to bring that preparation into the light. You have to put it on display with courage. You have to take the risk of being seen. That's what India did. It wasn't just prepared. It was prepared and unafraid to reveal that preparation at the highest level. And that's what turned a routine summit into a historic moment. The power of preparation meeting boldness is that it creates undeniable credibility. When you act boldly but have no foundation, people can dismiss you as arrogant. But when your boldness is backed up by real preparation, people can't deny it even if they don't like it. That's the kind of respect India commanded in that room. Even those who weren't ready to embrace it had to admit that the boldness wasn't empty. It was backed by something real, something proven, something undeniable. And that's why the United States never saw it coming, because they underestimated how much preparation had been happening in the background. and they underestimated how bold India would be in revealing it. The lesson here is clear: don't just prepare endlessly, and don't just be bold without foundation. Work quietly, build steadily, sharpen yourself in silence. But when the moment comes, don't hesitate to step into the light, because history doesn't remember those who stayed forever in the shadows. History remembers those who combine preparation with boldness and use that combination to flip the script. India didn't wait for permission, didn't wait for a perfect opportunity. It used the summit as the stage, and because of that, the narrative of global power shifted. And if you look at your own life, you'll see the same truth waiting for you. The moment you stop hiding your preparation, the moment you step boldly into your stage, the game will never look the same again. Life has a funny way of trying to hand you a script. From the moment you step out into the world, people start telling you how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to think, how far you're supposed to go. Teachers tell you what you can be, society tells you where you belong, and the world powers try to decide which nations should rise and which ones should stay in the background. That's the script. And most people live their whole lives reading off that script without even questioning it. They follow the lines someone else wrote. They stick to the role someone else gave them, and they wonder why their story never feels like it belongs to them. But let me tell you something powerful. You don't have to follow the script others wrote for you. You can tear that paper up. You can walk on stage and improvise your own destiny. And when you do, you can change the entire play. That's what India did at the Alaska summit. It refused to stick to the lines the world expected it to read, and instead it delivered its own message with strength, clarity, and boldness. For years, the global script was predictable. The United States was the lead actor, the dominant voice, the one who got to direct the play. Other nations were expected to play supporting roles, nodding along, agreeing silently, never challenging the main storyline. That's the way it had always been, but history shows us that every now and then someone comes along and refuses to just play their assigned part. Someone comes along and says, "No, this story needs a rewrite." At Alaska, India showed the courage to do exactly that. It wasn't disrespect. It wasn't chaos. It was simply the refusal to keep playing small. It was the declaration that the script had changed. And if the world hadn't realized it yet, it was about to think about what that means on a personal level. How many times have you been handed a script by people around you? Maybe they told you, "Stay in your lane. Don't dream too big. People like you don't make it that far. Play it safe. Keep your head down." That's the script they wanted you to follow. But if you ever want to live a life that truly belongs to you, you've got to break free from that script. You've got to decide that your story deserves your own voice. Because the truth is, no great success ever came from someone who stayed trapped in the role society wrote for them. Every breakthrough came from someone bold enough to step off the lines and speak from their own heart. That's when real change happens. At the Alaska summit, India proved that following the script is optional. It wasn't supposed to challenge. It wasn't supposed to assert itself with such confidence. The script for India was supposed to be silence, compliance, and waiting for approval. But when India spoke, it spoke from a place of strength, from years of growth, from undeniable progress. And the world had to sit up and listen, because when you break the script with authenticity, people may resist at first, but they can't ignore you. That's the beauty of creating your own lines. You force the world to adjust to your story instead of you constantly adjusting to theirs. Now, let's be real. Breaking the script isn't easy. It's risky. It makes people uncomfortable. It will make some people angry because they've gotten used to the idea of you staying in your role. They've benefited from you staying quiet, staying small, staying obedient. So when you step out of that, don't expect applause right away. Expect resistance, expect doubt. But here's the thing: if your script is true to who you are, if it's backed by preparation, and if it's delivered with boldness, then eventually the world has no choice but to respect it. India's decision to flip the script wasn't about arrogance. It was about authenticity. It wasn't about creating noise. It was about creating truth. And truth always cuts through. No matter how loud the old story used to be, there's a lesson here that applies to every dreamer, every fighter, every underdog. Stop reading from scripts that don't belong to you. Stop letting other people decide your ceiling. Stop thinking you have to play by rules that were never written with your success in mind. The world doesn't get to tell you how far you can go. They don't get to tell you what role you're limited to. You get to decide that. And the moment you realize that, the moment you act on that, everything shifts. The Alaska Summit was a reminder to the whole world that you can only keep someone on a script for so long. Eventually, if they find their voice, they'll change the entire play. India's boldness in rewriting the narrative wasn't just about that one summit. It was about the message it sent moving forward. It told every nation that the old story of power wasn't permanent. It told every individual watching that growth and courage can rewrite any destiny. And it told the ones holding the pen that they no longer control the whole script. That's the power of refusing to accept the lines handed to you. That's the power of speaking your own story into existence. That's the power of flipping the script so completely that the whole stage looks different the moment you're done. There's a moment in life when the world expects you to bow your head, to stay quiet, to let things pass, because they believe you're not ready, you're not powerful enough, or you don't have the right to take up space. That's when the true test comes, because it's easy to stand tall when everyone claps for you. But it's something entirely different to rise up when no one believes you should even be standing. That's what happened at the Alaska Summit. The expectation was simple. India would attend, smile politely, and play along while the bigger players dictated the conversation. But instead, India stood tall. It didn't shrink itself to fit into the narrative. It didn't apologize for being there. It didn't let the weight of history or the shadow of power intimidate it. India stood with its shoulders back, its voice strong, and its presence undeniable. That kind of confidence shakes the ground beneath everyone watching. Standing tall when no one expects you to isn't about arrogance. It's not about shouting louder than everyone else in the room. It's about presence. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and refusing to let anyone make you feel small. That's what the world saw in Alaska. They saw a nation that had been underestimated for decades finally saying, "We're not here to play a background role anymore. We're not here just to nod along. We're here because we've earned our place at the table, and we won't be ignored." That takes courage. And courage always makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to reevaluate the story they've been telling themselves about you. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have people looked at you and thought you wouldn't make it? How many times have they dismissed your potential, laughed at your dreams, or doubted your ability? Maybe they didn't say it out loud, but you could feel it in the way they treated you. And in those moments, you had two choices. You could accept their doubts and shrink yourself, or you could stand taller even when they thought you should sit down. That's the exact decision India made on the global stage. It wasn't supposed to push back. It wasn't supposed to hold its ground, but it did. And in doing so, it earned a new level of respect. Here's the thing most people don't realize: respect doesn't always come when you wait for it. Sometimes you have to demand it by the way you carry yourself. Respect isn't always given freely, especially in environments where people think they're above you. If you walk into a room believing you don't belong, that's exactly how they'll treat you. But if you walk in with the confidence that your presence has value, then even if they don't like it, they'll feel it. India's choice to stand tall wasn't just symbolic, it was necessary. Because if you let the world think you'll always stay silent, they'll never take you seriously. But when you stand up, when you speak boldly, when you refuse to bend, suddenly the game changes. Now let's be real. Standing tall when no one expects you to will test you. It will test your patience, because people will challenge you. It will test your confidence, because there will be moments when you question yourself. It will test your endurance, because standing tall is harder than staying small. But that's the price of growth, that's the price of leadership, and that's why only a few ever rise while the majority stay in the background. To stand tall requires you to embrace discomfort, to push past fear, and to recognize that sometimes being underestimated is the best gift you've been given. Because when people don't see you coming, your rise hits them harder. At Alaska, India's strength wasn't just in the words it spoke. It was in the posture it carried. It was in the calmness, the clarity, and the authority it projected without flinching. The United States didn't see it coming because they expected the old version of India. They expected quiet compliance, but what they got instead was a new India, one that refused to bend under pressure, one that refused to act smaller than it was, one that showed that respect on the world stage isn't tied to permission but to conviction. And that conviction forced everyone else in the room to rethink what they believed. That moment was more than politics. It was a lesson for anyone who has ever been underestimated. It was a reminder that you don't need permission to stand tall. You don't need approval to claim your space. You don't need validation to act with authority. All you need is the belief that you belong and the courage to back it up. Because when you carry yourself with that kind of strength, even the ones who doubted you will have no choice but to acknowledge you. They may not clap, they may not cheer, but they will notice. And in life, being noticed for your strength is far more valuable than being accepted for your silence. That's what makes standing tall so powerful. It doesn't just change how people see you, it changes how you see yourself. Once you realize you can hold your ground when no one expected you to, you never go back to shrinking again. You never go back to apologizing for your presence. You never go back to dimming your light so someone else can shine brighter. You recognize that you deserve to be on the stage, you deserve to have your voice heard, and you deserve to be respected, not because someone allowed it, but because you stood tall and proved it for yourself. Every generation has a defining moment, a point in time where someone, somewhere decides to step out of the shadow and take control of the stage. That moment at the Alaska summit wasn't just a political statement. It was proof that the future doesn't belong to the cautious. It doesn't belong to the ones who sit quietly and wait their turn. It doesn't belong to the ones too afraid to ruffle feathers. The future belongs to the fearless. And that's exactly what India showed the world. It wasn't fear that spoke in that room. It wasn't hesitation. It wasn't uncertainty. It was boldness. It was clarity. It was courage in its purest form. And when you move with courage, when you choose to act fearlessly, you don't just change your own position, you change the game for everyone. Fearless doesn't mean reckless. A lot of people get that confused. Fearless means you've calculated the cost, you understand the risk, but you refuse to let fear be the deciding factor. Think about it. Fear is what keeps most people from taking chances. Fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of being embarrassed, fear of being judged. That fear makes them play small, makes them settle for less, makes them sit in the background hoping one day someone will hand them the power they've been waiting for. But the truth is, nobody hands you power. Nobody gives you respect. Nobody offers you influence out of kindness. You have to take it, and the only way you can take it is by stepping into the arena fearless. That's what India did. It didn't walk into Alaska trying to make friends. It walked in determined to make history, and the thing about being fearless is this: it's contagious. When one person stands up boldly, others start to see what's possible. That's why moments like this matter so much. It wasn't just about a single summit or a single exchange of words. It was about signaling to the rest of the world that courage can shift the balance, that you don't have to be the biggest, you don't have to be the wealthiest, you don't have to be the oldest power in the room to change the dynamic. You just have to be fearless enough to stand in your truth and refuse to back down. Fearless doesn't guarantee an easy path, but it guarantees that people will remember you, and more importantly, it guarantees that your presence cannot be ignored. Look at history. Every great leap forward, every breakthrough, every revolution was led by people who chose fearlessness over comfort. Nobody remembers the ones who played it safe. Nobody remembers the ones who blended into the background. We remember the ones who broke the mold, the ones who flipped the script, the ones who did what no one expected them to do. India's move in Alaska was one of those moments. It was a reminder to the entire world that the future is not a continuation of the past. The game changes when someone has the audacity to play it differently, and the boldness to do that comes from being fearless. Now let's bring it closer to home. In your life, you've got people telling you what lane you should stay in, how high you can climb, how far you can go, and most of the time, their limitations aren't really about you. They're about their own fear. They can't imagine themselves doing it, so they assume you can't either. And if you're not careful, you'll start to absorb their fear and live smaller than you were ever meant to live. But when you choose to be fearless, when you decide to walk into rooms that weren't built for you and own your presence anyway, that's when you shift your entire future. That's when you show people that their fear doesn't apply to you. That's when you prove that the game belongs to the ones willing to play without hesitation. The reason the world is talking about Alaska is because it wasn't business as usual. It was a reminder that courage has a ripple effect. One bold move doesn't just change a conversation, it changes perception, it changes respect, it changes dynamics. India proved that when you're fearless, you don't have to wait for permission to lead. You don't have to ask for approval to be taken seriously. You create your own lane, you set your own pace, and you let the world adjust to you instead of the other way around. That's the essence of leadership, and it only comes to those who dare to face fear head on. Fear will always be there whispering doubts. It will tell you you're not ready. It will remind you of your past failures. It will highlight everything that could go wrong. But fear has one weakness. It can't survive action. The moment you move, the moment you step forward, the moment you speak boldly, fear loses its grip. That's why fearless people stand out. They act anyway. They step into situations others run from. And that's why they get outcomes others only dream of. That's why the game belongs to the fearless. Because they're the ones willing to put it all on the line while everyone else waits safely on the sidelines. India's choice to stand firm in Alaska wasn't just a diplomatic move. It was a statement of fearlessness, and that statement echoed louder than any scripted speech could. It was a declaration that the future doesn't belong to those who cling to comfort zones. It belongs to those bold enough to redefine them. And the beauty of this truth is that it doesn't just apply to nations. It applies to you. It applies to me. It applies to anyone who has ever been told to stay in their place. Because once you understand that the game belongs to the fearless, you realize the only thing standing between you and the life you want isn't the obstacles in front of you. It's the fear inside of you that you refuse to challenge.